Clouds covered the sun and the woods grew dark. It was early spring and the air still carried a chill. It had rained the day before and the ground was soft and muddy. His shoes sank into the mud as he hurried to keep up with Father. Father took long strides, crunching the twigs and leaves under his boots. He had the crossbow slung over the right shoulder of his brown leather jacket. A quiver of arrows bounced on his back. The boy heard the trees shaking overhead. Birds, probably, lighting in the branches. Something scampered across their path, a fat brown squirrel. "The turkeys won over side of that clearing," his father whispered. He pointed. "Two families of them, some fat, juicy birds. They travel together in a line." His words made the boy excited. He guessed because Father was actually talking to him, explaining something to him. He usually only grunted a few words or shouted at the boy about something he'd done wrong. This was the first time ever that the two were on an adventure together. Like friends, almost. So the boy was excited, but also frightened. Watching that deadly crossbow made him feel shaky and afraid. And as they walked, he kept his eyes on it. He watched it bob up and down over his father's shoulder. And he thought about what a powerful weapon it was, how fast and straight it sent the arrows flying. He imagined the thwack the arrow made as it driven deep into a tree trunk. He'd watched Father practice target shooting for hours in the back of their house. Never failed to fill him with cold dread. The sky brightened a little. The sunlight washed down through the thick trees overhead. A gust of wind made the branches tremble and creak. Father kicked a rock out of his way, made a loud thump as it slumped into a tree trunk, then bounced aside. The boy slipped over a thicket of wet leaves and fell to his knees. His father didn't notice. He just kept taking those long strides. The boy scrambled to catch up to him. "Father," he started. He raised a hand to shush the boy. He led the way into a small grassy clearing. He pressed a finger against his lips and then pointed. The boy saw 4 or 5 fat wild turkeys, heads bobbing as they walked. "There they are," Father whispered. Then, to the boy's surprise, Father slid the crossbow off his shoulder and shoved it hard into his hands. The boy wasn't expecting it. He nearly dropped it. He could feel his heart thudding in his chest. He felt a little dizzy. The crossbow was heavier than he imagined. "But, Father," he started. Father had his eyes on the bobbing, strutting turkeys. "Let's see you give it a try, son," he whispered. "Hurry, hold it steady like this." "But, Father," he moved the boy's hands over the handle. He pulled an arrow from the quiver and fit it into the crossbow. "I'll steady it for you, son," he said softly. "Hold it here." He moved the boy's hand down to the trigger. "Aim through the sight." The boy struggled to hold it up. It was heavy and too long for him. He couldn't balance it. He didn't know how to aim it or keep it steady. I'm just a kid, Father," he stammered. I'm only 10. This thing is too big for me." He didn't mean for it to come out so whiny. "Look, it's almost as long as I am." Father made a disgusted face. His blue eyes turned cold. "You've got to learn sometime," he said through his clenched teeth. The boy didn't want him to be angry. He wanted desperately to make his father proud of him. "Okay," he said. I'll try." "Be a man," he said. "A man has to know how to hunt." He raised the crossbow to his shoulder. His knees started to fold. He almost sank to the ground. He just couldn't balance it. "Hold it like this," Father said. He moved the handle over the boy's shoulder. Then he slid his son's hand to the trigger. Across the clearing, 2 more wild turkeys appeared. They began to peck at something in the grass. There were at least 7 or 8 of them now. I don't really know how to aim," the boy said. "Don't worry about that," Father replied. "Just get the feel of the crossbow." You don't have to shoot any turkeys today. First, you have to learn to handle the weapon. The boy nodded. His heart was still racing. But he felt a little better. At least his father didn't really expect him to shoot anything. Take a practice shot, Father said. He turned his son slightly and pointed. Just aim at those trees. Go ahead. Take a shot. You'll get the feel of it. Could the boy do it? He suddenly felt terrified. His hands were so sweaty. The crossbow handle felt slippery. He was trembling so hard. He wondered if Father could see him shaking. I want him to be proud of me, the boy thought. I want him to like me. I really don't want to fail. He took a deep breath and let it out. He tightened both hands, aimed through the sight. He aimed the sleek, deadly arrow at a fat tree trunk across the grass. He took another shuddering breath, squeezed the trigger with all his strength, fired, and as a burning pain shot through his body, he opened his mouth in a deafening scream. Chapter 4. What have I done? The pain throbbed, blinding pain. It faded slowly, and slowly the boy's senses began to snap back. His brain started up again. He saw the crossbow still in his hands. No arrow. He'd shot the arrow. Above him the trees appeared to tilt and sway. The whole earth was trembling, all a blur. His father's scream snapped him alert. You shot yourself in the foot! I don't believe it! You shot your own foot! Ah! A groan escaped the boy's throat. He glanced down and saw the shaft of the arrow poking straight up through the top of his left shoe. His foot throbbed in pain, and the pain shot up his leg, his whole body. I don't believe it! I don't believe it! Father repeated, shaking his head. He started to laugh. He laughed so hard tears ran down his cheeks. Father laughed until he could barely breathe. Father gave the arrow a hard pull and jerked it from his son's foot. Bright red blood spurted over the boy's shoe. At home, Mother dabbed the wound with alcohol. She wrapped the foot gently in a long white bandage. Father stood against the bathroom wall watching. He rubbed his stubbled cheeks but didn't say a word. Later, the boy was in his bedroom, lying on his back on the bed. He shut his eyes. He tried to calm down, tried to get his heart to stop racing. If only his bandaged foot would stop aching and throbbing. He kept picturing the fat turkeys, their heads bobbing as if they were listening to music, and the tall trees spinning, trembling over his head as he tried to balance that crossbow. Father's voice interrupted his thoughts. His parents were in the hall again. They didn't know their son could hear every word. Okay, you win, Father said. Let Johnny stay in his room with his toys and his books. That's where he belongs, Mother replied. The boy could hear the anger in her voice. He's a brilliant boy. You had no business taking Johnny hunting with you, no business at all. Don't worry, Father said. I never will take him again. Those words made Johnny sit straight up. Anger swept over him, anger so powerful it made him forget his aching, pulsing pain. I'll show you, Father, he shouted at the bedroom door. One day I'll show you that I can be a man. One day you'll be proud that I am your son. He stomped across the room to his bookshelves. He grabbed up spacemen and cowboys and monsters and soldiers. He gathered them into his arms, then he lined them all up, one by one. He lined them up on the floor in front of him. He went to the closet. He pulled out his red bathrobe. He wrapped the robe around him. Then he stepped back to the figures on the floor. His subjects. His loyal subjects. He raised his arm in the royal red robe and he shouted, I am Jonathan Chiller, your king. I am all powerful. You will obey me. You will all obey me. the end of